Sushi looks like the simplest food on earth: rice, fish, maybe a strip of seaweed. It is not simple, and almost everybody watching this actually has been eating it wrong the entire time. Take the rice vinegar sitting in your kitchen, maybe $2, and you probably think it's there for one job: making rice sticky. My grandmother Yuki would have laughed at that. That same bottle, next to a $2 strip of dried kelp called kombu, built an entire cuisine in her kitchen. In 1908, a Japanese chemist named Kikunai Ikeda pulled an amino acid called glutamate out of a pot of kombu broth and named the taste it produced umami, a taste nobody had a word for before him. 29 of the tricks in this video come straight out of that discovery, and decades of Japanese home cooking around it. Some of these Yuki did every day without knowing the chemistry behind them. A few are the actual reason raw fish is safe to eat at all. Stick with me for number 4, because the way she treated a $2 piece of seaweed will change how you make soup for good. Let's count them down. Number 29, the acid window. Next time you make sushi rice, treat the vinegar as more than flavor. As soon as the rice finishes cooking, fold in sushi vinegar, a blend of rice vinegar, sugar, and salt, until the batch reads close to a pH of 4.2. Food safety labs testing restaurant sushi rice have confirmed this for years. Here's why it works. The acetic acid drops the rice's pH low enough that Bacillus cereus and Staphylococcus aureus, the bacteria most likely to grow in cooked rice, cannot get a foothold. That's why sushi rice can sit out for hours and stay safe. Number 28, never refrigerate the rice. If you make extra, resist putting the bowl in the fridge. Japanese kitchens hold finished rice at room temperature, loosely covered, and use it the same day. Here's why it works. Cold accelerates starch retrogradation, where the amylose molecules that gelatinize during cooking recrystallize and squeeze water back out of the grain. Refrigerated sushi rice turns hard, chalky, and dull within hours, and reheating never brings the texture back. Make only what you'll eat, and your rice stays soft instead of turning to gravel. Number 27, serve it at body temperature. Sushi rice should never reach the table hot or cold, just warm against your hand, around 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. Every serious sushi kitchen holds rice this way, under a damp cloth, never a sealed lid. Here's why it works. Cold rice hardens the starch, suppresses the vinegar's aroma, and sharpens the salt, while rice that's too hot overwhelms delicate fish. Body temperature is the narrow window where the rice stays soft and the vinegar smells the way it should. Number 26, the short grain secret. If your homemade sushi never holds together like a restaurant's, check your rice bag. Japanese kitchens always reach for short grain, never long grain, and it's not just habit. Here's why it works. Short grain rice is rich in amylopectin, a starch that swells and ruptures early in cooking, at a lower temperature than long grain needs. That ruptured starch leaks out and forms the sticky coating that lets sushi rice hold its shape under hand pressure instead of crumbling apart. Number 25, wet your hands first. Before shaping a piece of nigiri, dip your fingers in tezu, a simple mix of water and rice vinegar. Sushi chefs do this before every piece, not from habit, but necessity. Here's why it works. Sticky rice bonds to bare skin almost as fast as it bonds to itself, and the mild acidity changes how the surface starch behaves against your hands, keeping rice off your fingers instead of the fish. Skip this, and you'll spend more time scraping rice off your palms than shaping it. Number 24, cut, don't stir. When you fold vinegar into hot rice, use a shimoji, a flat wooden paddle, and slice through it in clean strokes rather than stirring like soup. It's one of the first things any Japanese home cook learns. Here's why it works. Stirring mashes the grains together and ruptures far more starch granules than necessary, releasing enough loose starch to turn the rice gummy. A slicing, folding motion coats every grain in vinegar while keeping the grain structure intact, the difference between rice that holds its shape and rice that clumps into paste. Those first 6 were all about the rice, the quiet foundation nobody notices when it's right. Stay with me because the fish tricks come next, and number 19 explains why wasabi has sat next to raw fish for 1,000 years. Number 23, the single pull cut. A sharp yanagiba knife should go through raw fish in one continuous pull, heel to tip, never sawing back and forth. This detail alone separates a clean slice from a mushy one. Here's why it works. Each time a blade reverses direction, it drags across already cut flesh and ruptures muscle cells, releasing moisture and the free glutamate locked inside, the same amino acid Ikeda found in kombu. A clean single pull keeps cells intact, meaning more moisture, more natural umami, and a glossy slice instead of a torn one. Number 22, freeze it first. If you're preparing raw fish at home rather than buying it ready, freezing isn't optional. The FDA requires fish meant to be eaten raw to be held at -4 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 days or -31 degrees Fahrenheit until solid. Here is why it works. Those exact time and temperature combinations are what destroy anisakis, the parasite most linked to raw fish. Your home freezer, around 0 degrees Fahrenheit, almost never gets cold enough alone. Buy fish already labeled for raw consumption because no amount of wasabi replaces this step. Number 21, salt before vinegar. This was Yuki's method for mackerel called shime saba. Salt the fillet generously, flesh side up, and let it rest an hour before rinsing and moving to a vinegar bath. Yuki swore this step could not be skipped. Here's why it works. The salt pulls water out of the fish through osmosis, carrying trimethylamine with it, the compound behind mackerel's fishy smell. What's left is firmer flesh with concentrated flavor, ready for the vinegar to finish the job. Skip the salting and you're just pickling a fishy piece of fish. Number 20, vinegar cooks without heat. After salting, that mackerel goes into a rice vinegar bath for another hour, and something changes with no heat involved. Here is why it works. The acid denatures the proteins in the fish, unfolding and restructuring them the way heat would, turning the flesh from translucent red to opaque white. This is why shime saba can be eaten raw safely and still have the firm, almost cooked texture people expect from fish that's technically never touched a flame. The acid did the work, heat usually does. Number 19, wasabi's real job. Wasabi hasn't sat next to raw fish for 1,000 years by accident. Before refrigeration existed, Edo period sushi cooks already understood it did more than add heat. Here's why it works. Wasabi contains allyl isothiocyanate, a compound with genuine antimicrobial activity against bacteria like E. coli and Staphylococcus aureus, and recent research even shows nematocidal effects against anisakis larvae. It won't sterilize a bad piece of fish, and it's never a substitute for freezing. But this pairing was never just tradition for tradition's sake. Number 18, grate it gently in circles. Yuki kept a small shark skin grater just for wasabi and was strict about how it got used. Never press hard, always move in small circles. Here's why it works. Heavy pressure mashes the root into watery paste, but a gentle circular motion ruptures the plant's cells at the rate needed for an enzyme called myrosinase to react with a compound called sinigrin, producing wasabi's sharp, volatile heat. Grate it wrong, and you get bitterness. Grate it Yuki's way and you get clean, nose-clearing heat that fades if you wait too long. Number 17, wasabi goes under, not in. Sushi chefs place a small amount of wasabi between the fish and the rice, never stirred into soy sauce. Mixing it in is a rookie mistake at any serious counter. Here's why it works. The compound behind wasabi's kick is highly volatile, and its peak potency fades within 15 to 20 minutes of grating. Stirring it into soy sauce spreads it thin and speeds up that loss, while tucking it under the fish protects it and lets it hit your palate at full strength right on the bite. Those 7 were about handling the fish itself, but everything from here on is about flavor, the science Japan built a 5th taste around. Stay with me, because number 9 is the exact ratio that turns 2 ordinary ingredients into something 8 times more savory. Number 16, the vegetarian umami secret. If a dish needs a savory backbone but no fish, dried shiitake mushrooms are where Japanese cooks have turned for centuries, especially in the vegetarian temple cooking known as shojin ryori. Here's why it works. In 1957, chemist Akira Kunanaka isolated a compound called guanylate from dried shiitake broth, a separate umami substance from glutamate, and drying the mushroom dramatically increases how much is present. Simmer a handful in water for 15 minutes and you have a stock with real savory depth, no meat or fish required. Number 15, nori's umami trifecta. That sheet of seaweed wrapped around your roll isn't just texture, it's doing more flavor work than almost anything on the plate. Here's why it works. Nori is the only seaweed containing all three major umami compounds at once: free glutamate, inosonate, and guanylate. With glutamate alone, measured at roughly 1,378 milligrams per 100 grams, the same amino acid Ikeda first pulled from kombu in 1908. Toast a sheet lightly before using it, and that umami grows even more pronounced, which is why a good roll tastes savory before you add a single piece of fish. Number 14, the amino acid math. Good soy sauce isn't seasoned to taste savory, it's fermented into being savory over months. Traditional shoyu starts with soybeans and wheat inoculated with a mold called Aspergillus oryzae, then fermented for 6 to 8 months or longer. Here's why it works. Enzymes from that mold break the proteins down into roughly 20 amino acids, and glutamic acid plays the single biggest role in the resulting umami. A splash of real slow fermented soy sauce carries more of that compound than most people realize, which is why a little goes further than a lot of salt. Number 13, the bonito multiplier. Katsuobushi, dried and smoked bonito flakes, does not start out as umami powerful as it ends up. The drying process itself is what does the work. Here's why it works. As the fish dries and smokes, its ATP converts into a compound called inosonate, increasing the inosonate content by up to 30 times over raw fish. That is a separate umami compound from the glutamate in kombu, which is why traditional dashi never uses kombu alone. The two are combined on purpose, because neither was meant to work solo. Number 12, ginger's double duty. That pale pink pickled ginger, gari, isn't a garnish. It's doing two jobs at once. Between pieces of fish, a small bite resets your palate before the next flavor arrives. Here's why it works. Ginger contains a compound called gingerol, with documented antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties, plus a warming effect that offsets the chill of raw fish. It's mild, not a substitute for food safety, but it's real chemistry, layered onto a tradition of palate cleansing that goes back generations. Number 11, hot tea, cold fish. That strong, unusually hot green tea served at sushi counters called agari isn't there because diners love scalding drinks. Here's why it works. The heat melts residual fish oils on your tongue, while catechins in the tea, especially EGCG, bind to those oils and strip them away, resetting your palate. Studies have also shown EGCG has genuine antibacterial activity against pathogens like Vibrio parahemolyticus, sometimes linked to raw seafood. It's not a substitute for proper handling, but it's not just hot water either. Number 10, the grated radish trick. Yuki never served fried or oily fish without grated daikon radish on the side, and always grated it right before serving, never ahead of time. Here's why it works. Raw daikon contains digestive enzymes, diastase, amylase, and protease that break down starches, fats, and proteins, but they're fragile and lose most of their effect once temperature climbs past 50 degrees Celsius, or the radish sits too long after grating. Grate it fresh, eat it raw, and you get the benefit Yuki always insisted on. Number 9, the exact ratio. Japanese cooks combined kelp and bonito flakes for centuries before anyone could explain why it tasted better than either alone. Here's why it works. Chemist Akira Kunanaka discovered that mixing glutamate and inosonate doesn't just add their flavors, it multiplies them, and a 1-to-1 ratio produces umami roughly 7 to 8 times more intense than either alone. That's the whole secret behind why dashi, built from kombu and katsuobushi together, tastes so much deeper than a broth made from just one. Number 8, dip the fish, not the rice. When you eat nigiri, tip the piece over so only the fish touches the soy sauce, never the rice. It's standard etiquette at any sushi counter, but it's not just manners. Here's why it works. Exposed, rice absorbs a liquid almost instantly, so dipping rice side down oversaturates it with sodium and can throw off the vinegar balance, muting the fish's own natural glutamate under a wave of salt. Dip the fish side only, and you taste it the way it was actually seasoned to be tasted. Everything so far happened at the sushi counter, but this science didn't stay there, and neither should you. Stick around for number 4, the trick that changes how you make soup for good, just like I promised. Number 7, the umeboshi trick. Yuki always tucked a single umeboshi, a salted and dried pickled plum, into the center of any onigiri meant for a bento box or a long train ride. Here's why it works. Umeboshi is extremely high in citric acid, which has real antibacterial properties, exactly why samurai carried them as field rations centuries ago, to keep rice safe on long journeys without refrigeration. It's sour enough to make your whole face pucker, but that sourness is doing genuine preservation work, not just adding flavor. Number 6, the antiseptic leaf. That green shiso leaf tucked under sashimi isn't purely decorative, and it isn't meant to be eaten plain either. Here's why it works. Shiso contains a compound called paraldehyde with documented antiseptic properties, and chefs place it directly against raw fish because it genuinely slows bacterial growth on contact. It's a small, quiet detail most people walk past, but one more garnish in Japanese cooking earning its place through actual chemistry, not just tradition. Number 5. Nori doesn't stop at sushi. That same seaweed sheet from number 15 has a life far outside of rolls. Here's why it works. Toasted nori carries that same free glutamate that makes it one of the most umami, dense ingredients in Japanese cooking, and crumbling it over scrambled eggs, plain rice, or noodles adds real savory depth without adding salt. It's one of the cheapest umami boosters in any kitchen, and most people leave the leftover half sheet sitting in the package. Number 4, never boil your kombu. This is the one I promised you. If you're making dashi and let the pot reach a full rolling boil with the kombu still in it, you've ruined it. Here's why it works. Kombu releases glutamic acid steadily between 60 and 80 degrees Celsius, but push it past that into a boil and it starts releasing alginic acid instead, turning the broth bitter, cloudy, and slightly slimy. Pull the kombu the moment small bubbles form on the bottom of the pot, well before a rolling boil, and the broth stays clean. Now for the final 3. These aren't the flashiest tricks here, but they're the ones running underneath everything else you just heard. If you remember nothing else, remember these 3. Number 3, the home umami hack. You don't need a Japanese pantry to use Kuninaka's discovery from number 9. Here's why it works. Any glutamate-rich ingredient, kombu, tomatoes, parmesan, paired with an inosinate-rich or guanylate-rich one, mushrooms, meat, dried fish, produces that same multiplied umami effect, not just an added one. Drop a strip of kombu into tomato soup or regular chicken stock and taste it round out and deepen within minutes without adding a single extra grain of salt. This is Kuninaka's ratio working outside a Japanese kitchen. Number 2, sharpen the knife first. Before any of the other 28 tricks matter, your knife has to actually be sharp and not just for raw fish. Here's why it works. A sharp blade separates cells cleanly with minimal pressure, while a dull one crushes and tears them, releasing moisture and flavor before the food reaches your mouth, whether that's a fillet of tuna or a stalk of basil. It's the least glamorous trick on this list, and the one that decides whether every other trick even gets a chance to work. Number 1, Granny Yuki's dashi. Everything on this list comes back to this single pot, kombu and katsuobushi, steeped together the way Yuki did it every morning of her life. Here's why it works. It's Kunanaka's discovery and Ikita's discovery, living in the same broth at once, glutamate from the kelp and inosinate from the bonito, multiplying each other into something neither could be alone. Yuki splashed it into soup, simmered vegetables, sauces, anything that needed rounding out. It was never just a recipe to her. It was the one thing she never let anyone else make. That $2 bottle of rice vinegar and that $2 strip of kombu were never just cheap pantry staples. They were the start of a taste an entire country discovered, named and built a cuisine around, all because Kikunai Ikeda paid attention to a pot of broth in 1908, the same broth Yuki paid attention to every morning of her life. If any of these 29 tricks earned a place in your kitchen, do her proud. Share it with someone who needs it. Tell me your favorite in the comments and subscribe for more of what Yuki taught me. She'd have liked that.